Hello, and welcome to Sound Off with System One. I'm your host, Krista Kornchuk, and I'm here today with our panel of experts to discuss your biggest interview and resume questions. That means if you're tuning in live, you can send us your most pressing job search related questions, and we'll try to answer as many as possible. Before we get started, here are a few words about System One. System One is a leading provider of specialized, highly technical outsourced services and workforce solutions to critical infrastructure, technology, life science, and government sectors, putting more than 650 employees and 9,000 contractors to work in the United States, Canada, and the UK. As you're tuning in today, please join us in the comments. Our marketing team will be monitoring them. Let us know where you're joining from and what industry you work in. And as I said before, we encourage you to send us your most pressing job search related questions, as this is a live Q&A. And before we get started with your questions, I'm going to have our panel of experts introduce themselves. Our panel will also be sharing their hot jobs, which you can find at the bottom of the screen or by scanning the QR code. To view all other available jobs, go to jobs.system1.com. Jayne, we'll start with you.
Hi, I'm Jayne Homan. I work as a recruiter with System One based in the Pittsburgh office. My hot job is a senior graphic designer, hybrid situation for a retail client in Pittsburgh. Looking for 3 days in the office, and ultimately our biggest software we need is Figma. But if you have some great experience, we can talk through that and go from there.
Hi, everyone. My name is Katerine. I'm a senior recruiter at Jayne, specializing in clinical research and healthcare recruitment. Today, my hot job is a remote clinical research budget analyst 3. So it is a 12-month contract to hire. Now, for this role, you would need to have experience creating budgets for clinical trials and must have used this system Encore.
And I am Danielle Metcalf. I'm the recruitment services lead here in Houston. We service the multitude of industries that Houston has to offer, but specifically the role that I'm highlighting today is in the pest control space. My client is looking for a senior FP&A person to join the team. They're looking to bring their efforts in-house from using a third party. They are requiring a degree in either finance or accounting. An MBA or CPA would be preferred. Minimum experience of 2 to 3 years in a similar position. If you have industry, even better, but not required. And the top 3 things that they are looking for in a candidate is someone who's ambitious, has significant modeling skills, and a strategic mindset.
Perfect. And again, if you want to view those jobs, scan the QR code and make sure you connect with our experts on LinkedIn. Without further ado, we're going to get started. I'm going to have our panel of experts start by sharing job tips that their candidates have been benefiting from. In the meantime, please send in all your questions. We're going to start answering them very soon. Jayne, we'll start with you. What do you have for a job tip?
Awesome. My main job tip that I tell all of my candidates, no matter which industry I'm working in, is to have a little bit of patience. And it goes both ways. I'll be patient with you. If you're having multiple interviews, just keep me in mind. Let me know if anything changed on your end. I'll keep you posted along the way. Now, patience is a pretty blanket term. I don't know why I'm asking you to have patience, but I'll tell you as much information as I have from my client. Say they're considering other candidates from maybe a different firm, or they have one opening and they have 10 really great candidates. I'll keep you posted. Just have a little bit of patience after the interview process, and I will keep that communication open until we can either move forward or close out that circle.
Yeah, and for me, my big thing, well, 2 things actually, is the resume and what not to do for a job application. So for resumes, as most of us would get for recruiters or hiring managers, is unreadable resumes, which unfortunately that is the case. So what the best thing to do is to make sure your contact information is on the very top. I know a lot of people tend to put their full name, but never put a phone number or email address. Sometimes don't even put down where they're currently living. So make sure to have your contact information up top. Like I said, that's the way we would contact you. So your full name, city, state, and then your phone number and email address. The next thing you will want to have is professional summary below that. So about 2 or 4 lines explaining who you are, what you do, and what you bring. So tailor it to each job that you're applying to. So sometimes it's best to, as an example, put down like, hey, I've experienced CRC, which is a clinical research coordinator with 5+ years managing oncology trials. If there's other therapeutic areas that you are focused on, make sure to include that into your professional summary. Now, below that, you would want to have professional experience. Now, please list out your most recent. A lot of times I've gotten people who had their first job up top, and that's not what we would want. We want your most recent up top. So include the company name, where it is, and if it's remote, put down remote in there. If it's also a contract position, put down contract. And also please put the month and the year. A lot of times we do tend to get the year on your resume. It doesn't show how many years of experience you have or what your, so how long you've been with your company that you're currently at, or in the past. So have the month and year when you first started and when you ended, and then below the job title. Of course, include bullet points that describe your achievement and what you've done. Now, one of the big things I do notice on resumes is they start with I. You do not want to start your bullet points with I. You want to start it with more of an adjective verb. So, it's lead or created or analyzed or managed. You want to do that. And then below that, you want to have your education. So put down, what your degree is, the school name, the city and state, and the month that you graduated. Now, if you are in the progress of getting your degree, make sure to put that in there that you're in progress. Below that, you can have different sections. So certifications or publications section for it. There's a skill section that you can include to the systems that you've used in the past. Any languages that you can also include that there. Now, final tip with the resumes, make sure to have 2 to 3 pages. If you're early in your career, then have 1 page. If you're more in advance, then have 2 to 3 pages. You can have a little bit more, but I have gotten in the resumes in the past about 18 pages. That is not what you would want to do, listing out your whole entire experience. The most important ones you want to list up front with more bullet points. If you've been in the industry for 35 years, and you can list down other companies, you don't have to put bullet points for that, but you can put down previous experience. That's also perfectly fine. But you want to stick to 2 to 3 pages and make sure it's clear and readable. And also make sure it is the same size and proofread to your for spelling and grammar. Now, for job applications, are we very quick with this? So tailor your resume to match the job description. Don't apply without researching the company, and also don't lie on your resume, representing your skills or your experience or education, because that initially would backfire. And also, don't apply to dozens of jobs without a strategy. So quality is more important than quantity, so it's better to submit 5 applications than 30 random ones, and do not apply to the same ones multiple times. We initially will see your resume and you see your application, so we'll get to it. And then also just don't skip the follow-up after an interview and application. Reach out saying, hey, I've applied to this job. I'm still interested, it's still available, and we'll be in contact with you. So always contact a recruiter.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And to piggyback off of that, 2 little tips. One is, I feel like it's common to think that your application, your resume is getting lost in the mix of all of the people online applying to jobs. But as a whole, if everyone is being strategic and thinking about the jobs that they're applying to, your resume wouldn't be one of 500. It would be one of 100, right? Because you're tailoring and you're thinking through, I'm an actual match for this job. So if the greater amount of the network, the market, was being diligent about applying to jobs that actually match their resume, I think we'd all have a better time with the way that the ATS systems work. Lastly is communication. Oftentimes we hear about the idea of ghosting, but it really does happen on both sides. And we will work with candidates who are interested in an opportunity. We get them in front of it, and then we don't hear from them. Maybe that's when we have an interview ready to set with them and the client, or even just waiting for them to get back with us on if they want to move forward with an opportunity. We understand as recruiters that you all are doing your own part, probably working with other agencies as well, other firms who are assisting in your search, but just do your part in communicating to us those updates so that we can have the answers that you need, that our clients need. It really does create a better working relationship all around if everyone's kept in the loop.
Those are some great tips. Thank you guys so much. We're getting a lot of questions coming in. Please keep them coming. I would like to address a question that we got before the live broadcast, if we could put that up. What do you think makes a candidate stand out most during the application and interview process? Great question. Thanks for sending that in early.
Yeah, I can take that. To make for a person stand out, especially during like an application or interview, is doing your research, and it's on the company, making sure you're reading the application itself, the job description, and see if it aligns with your background. Now, if you're applying, like I said before, and what Danielle mentioned, is tailor your resume to match that job. If you're applying and let's say you have that certain experience, but it's not listed on your resume, there's a chance that, and that's a requirement. We may not move forward because we see that you may not have the right experience for this particular job. And again, that's the requirement. So you want to make sure that it is matching it. And then for the interview process, again, doing the research on the company, knowing what you're getting yourself into, why you like this company that you're applying to. I've seen people go in without having done their research and they're just winging it, which sounds crazy to say. And a lot of times the hiring managers can see that. They notice that, oh, you didn't really do your research, which means that you're not passionate about the job.
To piggyback off of that, a lot of times these days we're doing either phone interviews or virtual interviews and really setting your mentality up as if you are directly in front of that hiring manager or recruiter. It's easy to be a little more relaxed in your space when you're on a phone interview or a video call. But showing up as you would as if you were in person is really going to have an impact on what the takeaway is from the other side.
I think those are great. Ultimately, at the end, just keeping that open line of communication after the interview process. As Danielle mentioned, I mentioned, Kat mentioned, we do lose people at the end we get through that whole process and we'll still lose someone. So just keep us in the loop across the board.
It looks like we're getting a question about applying to a role with if you have a PhD for a non-PhD role. It can be hit or miss, right? Some hiring managers might quickly rule you out because they think that you're overqualified. But if it's not required, it has the potential to just higher your chances, because oftentimes if they're looking at education already, it probably isn't going to be a negative thing. I would say it's definitely worth a try.
We have another question coming up. How much of AI should be used in tailoring your resume? Great question.
I think this is a great question. I was just talking with a candidate about this last week. So I like to have a blank resume. Well, not a blank. I like to have a blanket resume, one that you can use for everything, and then tailor it. So it's going to sound like we're asking you to create a new resume for every job that you see. That's not the case. Highlight different qualifications per job. I'm sure most people have one industry that they've been in or that they're going, say you've been in transportation and you're applying for a transportation job. Your resume is not going to need too much changing where it feels like a brand new resume. Have your own words. I recommend using AI to maybe cross-reference it with the job description, see what you have, see what you should highlight, and then go from there. Make it yours. We can tell when AI is used overly, and we can't, it feels like we're talking to a computer or conversing with a computer when we read that sort of resume. So there's a fine line. Have your own, tailor it, and then apply.
Yeah, I think using the rule of thumb is using it as a tool and not the answer. Specifically, what I'm seeing is we'll get resumes that just clearly are not that person's voice, right? That written tone. And you get on the phone with them and you're like, this person isn't polished at all. So making sure that your voice as a person still comes through in what you present on your resume, I think is really key.
Fantastic. And we had a question come in specifically for Kat. What advice do you have to give someone early in their scientific career who is eager to make an impact? Great question.
Yeah, that is a great question. And I've gotten that too a bunch of times when I talk to candidates and, when they're applying for a certain job. And I think it depends on what job you're applying to. Like, for instance, if you're trying to go into, say, clinical research and you want it to be like a clinical research assistant or, go into the CRO or pharma side, I think it varies on each job. A lot of times I've also gotten people who want to become like an entry level CRA, which is a clinical research associate. Now those are a little bit hard to find, and I'll be very honest with people. Those are entry level. A lot of times right now, a lot of clients are looking for more senior people, so we don't get those often. But what I recommend is going into, like I said, a clinical research assistant or a CRC. That will help a little bit. Now, if you have no clinical research experience whatsoever, and you have some type of healthcare background, if you're a medical assistant or again, like phlebotomy experience or you're a nurse, you can definitely get into that. You're already working in the healthcare in the hospital. So you can reach out to one of the departments there saying, hey, I would like to transfer over. How can I get into that? There's times, of course, as recruiters, we do get entry level positions. It just varies on each department and what they're looking at. So I know it's a general answer that I'm giving to you. We can have more of a conversation if you would want, Mary. You can always contact me and I can definitely give you more in depth of what you're looking for, or we can talk about it. But again, I think it's just really hard to know exactly what you're looking for.
Fantastic. And we have another question. We touched upon this a little bit, but how do you recommend balancing quantity versus quality in applications? Is it better to apply for more roles with a slight customization or fewer roles with deep tailoring?
I can take this one. I think it's going to be maybe a personal preference. I would say apply to the jobs that you find fit your background. You might apply to fewer roles with deep tailoring, but say a recruiter or the hiring manager doesn't know that we're one of 3. We might think you've applied to 20. So the deep tailoring could be great, but at the end of the day, if we have other candidates and someone else is chosen, I don't want you to not apply to more roles. And this is a fine line. I don't want you to apply to 25 and then ghost all the hiring managers. So it's kind of a fine line. I think slight customizations, but I think it can be a personal preference here.
Yeah, I think it depends on how technical the job is. If they're requiring, tons of technical skills, that deep tailoring might be necessary. But at the end of the day, you want to get in front of the opportunities that are going to make the most sense. And one of the things I want to point out here too is if you're looking to switch industries or make a change, an application is not going to be the route to do that. You really do need to connect with recruiters or leverage your network to make introductions. The application process is not going to forge that route for you alone. But I agree. I think the deep tailoring needs to be selectively done because there is a thing as job application fatigue. And if you're doing that for every role that you're applying to, you're going to get burnt out quickly. So maximizing a general resume is probably most helpful.
Yeah, it's definitely not good to get burnt out during the job search because the process as it is very exhausting.
Yes.
Alexis asked a really great question. What sticks out to you most in a cover letter, and should we always take advantage of the cover letter option?
Yeah, I can definitely answer that one. What sticks out the cover letter is pretty much like the professional summary that should be on your resume. So listing out how many years of experience you have, again, either in clinical research or healthcare or just anything overall that you're applying to, listing that out and making yourself stand out too. So if there's a certain job that you're applying to, again, there's certain requirements that are asking about, like I said, certain systems or certain things that you would need to do. Put that into your cover letter. I've done this, I've led a team, I manage also a team of 10 people, or, I started off at this and then, gradually went up. Now, the cover letter, of course, it's going to be, a paragraph, could be a little bit more, but again, it's your experience and how you fit this job. And what you take advantage of that, I definitely would. If there's an option there, again, it's going to make you stand out. So if there's certain things that's listed on your resume, then leave it there. If certain things are not listed on your resume, then that's where you put it into the cover letter. So again, they want to see your experience overall. So even though, yes, we as recruiters will reach out to you, discuss your background, we'll be able to understand it. And some things we'll tell you, hey, let's tailor your resume to match this. And then, certain questions we'll be able to send over to you. We'll be aided into like a summary sent over to the client. But if you're just directly applying to the job itself and they're asking for a cover letter, please definitely take advantage of that and add stuff that's, again, it's not really listed on your resume. It's more so an overview of your background.
Yeah, I would piggyback on that to say, think of a cover letter as your opportunity to speak to them before you're in front of them. So with recruiters, I know for our team, we don't look at cover letters. They're not required for our process, and we'll get on the phone with you. But leveraging that letter to kind of sell your soft skills maybe, or connect the dots that maybe your resume is going to take some time to do, pinpointing those key matches from the job and your skill set. But it really is just a way for you to communicate before you can get on a phone call or an interview with someone at the company.
Fantastic. Our next question, is it wise to locate the recruiter in a company in LinkedIn and reach out after applying for a job? Should I also send my resume if I do this? Good question, Cheryl.
I personally recommend this. I feel like there's mixed reviews in our space on this. But my key to doing that is keeping it short, keeping it professional, and yes, do attach the resume. You want to make it as easy as you can for them to get to your information. If you're doing this, make sure it's the appropriate contact. I will also add in, if you're working with a recruiter, do not do this. So if you are working with a recruiter, you know who the employer is, do not go message that employer directly. We will handle all the communication. We've run into this happening recently. But yes, I think it's, as long as it's professional, and yes, do attach your resume, there's no issue with it.
I think those are great points, Danielle. And that's when it comes to sharing the client. Most of the time we do share the client. Sometimes, depending on the industry, we might hold that a little closer. We'll give you as much information, but we want everybody to have as much information that we can. But that is part of the reason why we don't share everything up front. We want to be able to assist you. If you go around us, or say you connect with a different person, if there's too many irons in the fire, another person might think you're in contact, and then nobody follows up because there's just too much going on. And sometimes if you reach out to, say, the wrong recruiter, say I post a job or you apply to my job, but Kat, you're connected with Kat, you reach out to Kat and say, hey, I applied to this job. Might not be yours, but can you help me? And Kat could look in the system and say, oh, I don't work that job, but I think I know my colleague does. So it's just kind of that fine line of keeping the communication with the recruiter. It might be the wrong recruiter, but I guess there's no such thing as a wrong recruiter.
Yeah. And to reiterate, while that is okay to do, you're not guaranteed a response, unfortunately, especially if it's with a hiring company. Who knows what their LinkedIn usage is like? A lot of companies are using other platforms to recruit them. And so you're not guaranteed. And honestly, it at this point in the process, it's probably just another attempt at getting in front of them. And if they're not responding, it's not best to continue to try. But it doesn't hurt. And if there is no response, it doesn't necessarily mean anything for your application. It could simply be because some people just don't use LinkedIn like we do.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. And I'm getting multiple follow-up questions to this. People want to know, how do they know if they're reaching out to the right recruiter? How do they know, or how do you reach out to the right recruiter? So what do you all recommend on that?
Yeah, good question. So oftentimes if you see the job also posted on LinkedIn, I'd say there's a high percentage of someone being tagged to that job posting. If not, doing research on the company on LinkedIn and seeing which professionals within the organization might be targeted towards their talent, whether it be an HR rep or a a recruiter within the company, you're going to want to look at their titles. I recommend going the HR route. If let's say you're applying to an engineer position and you see an engineering manager, hit or miss with contacting them. Again, a lot of times major companies are going through HR. So I think sticking to that space. What do you guys think in terms of going hiring manager to HR versus HR?
Absolutely HR all the way. Someone in the HR realm is going to be able to help you the best. The hiring manager, they're at that next stage. They're expecting when they hear I have a candidate, there's going to be a write-up, there's going to be conversation, there's going to be interview availability. Sometimes if someone goes to them, they might think that they've already been talked to and they're going to see them somewhere else. So try to stay on a path, reach out to a recruiter, get that conversation rolling, and then follow up. Another thing, I know I touched on this before, and nothing is like a wrong recruiter. Our emails, you know, once you connect with someone, more than likely you have access to their contact information. I've received emails. Hey, my name's Cheryl. I applied to this position. Here's my resume. Can you help me with the next steps? Something along those lines. I might not be able to. I can be that next step to get to the actual recruiter, like I said, inside our system. Or sometimes I might already have the instructions from the team. Hey, we're working through everybody. Just kind of let them know we have it. We're reviewing it.
Yeah, and Danielle and Jayne said good points. And if you're reaching out to the recruiter or, you know, HR person, and you're applying to a job, make sure to tell them exactly what job you're applying to and add the ID number. Because I know, again, if you're applying to Jolie or if you're applying on LinkedIn, again, LinkedIn will see that. But if you can find it on our website, then add the job ID to that email or to that message on LinkedIn to us, because then we're able to look at it. Because again, we may not be assigned to that particular job, but we can go and look because now we have the title and the ID number, and we can figure out who is the best person to contact for this particular job. Again, if you're just putting in the title or nothing, it might be really hard for us to figure out what exactly the jobs that you're interested in or you apply to.
Fantastic. And Joshua is asking, are there any tips for people who have a big job gap on their resume? Also tips having a lot of academic experience, but no work experience. Love this question. We've had episodes on this as well. What do you think, panel?
So rule of thumb on resumes is you want to answer any question that might pop up in someone reviewing your resume's head. So whether it be a recruiter or an internal person. So when it comes to age gaps, if it's appropriate, there's nothing wrong with listing why that position ended. And then kind of maybe painting a picture in the gap. I see oftentimes people, if it's a medical leave or to assist with family matters, there's nothing wrong with putting a little, you don't need to over explain, just a simple line, maybe in italics in between those two roles, giving a little bit of an answer to it. And then of course, when you're in a conversation with someone, you can expand on it, as long as it's professional. There's nothing wrong with kind of giving that answer before they can make their own judgments. Yeah, I'll stop there with that part of the question if someone wants to pick up.
Yeah, I can add on. So that was a great point, Danielle, with the resumes, because it does help for us as recruiters to see exactly what's going on. Now, for the tips on having a lot of academic experience and no work experience, you know, if you're in the lab, and I've had this previously because I've worked on a lab tech position or a lab lead, and a lot of times, you know, you're getting your master's and you then eventually get your PhD if that's something you're looking to go about. You want to go and listen that, okay, you know, I'm a graduate student. This is what my title was, or I was a researcher for this particular hospital or university, worked with this lab, and I did this, and this for amount of years. It does help to list out that regardless of you going to school, you were still doing something with your, again, working in the lab, which is perfectly fine because we were looking at that for those particular jobs. And we like to see that regardless, you were still going to school, but you were doing something that's still relatable to the job that you may apply to. So I wouldn't put just down no professional work experience. You put down like, hey, like a graduate student, this is where I was working at. I've done this for amount of years while I was attending school. We can see that, again, you were doing that. And it does help exactly to show bullet points what that was.
Fantastic. Our next question, we really like this one, Cheryl. Is it worth hiring an AI service to auto apply for me? I know Jayne has an answer for this one.
I do. I really like that question. I don't know about hiring and paying money for that. I would say not to have anything auto apply for you. You're going to receive calls. I'm going to say, hey, I'm Jayne with System 1. You applied to my job. Cheryl, you might not know what job I'm talking about. And we're starting from not like square one, we're starting like negative. So it's best maybe look into AI platforms to find jobs for you to apply to, but you should do the application process. I think it's very important that you're invested in it. Maybe find the jobs on the front end with the service if you'd like to, but I really would not recommend applying on your behalf.
Yeah, agreed.
Short and simple. I like it. All right. Another great question we have. If you don't have all of the qualifications, should you still apply?
I'll answer that. I think it's more so to be realistic with it. So let's say, for instance, you're an entry level person and you're applying and you see this like manager position. Definitely don't apply to that. You may have some qualifications to that, but you're really not a manager. You're not leading. You're not managing a team. So I think, again, you have to be realistic to the jobs that you're applying to. If there's one thing that from the requirements that you're missing, it could be the system that you may not have used. Then yeah, I would say apply, because maybe other systems that are very relatable to that particular one, and that's perfectly fine. Again, I think it's, amount of years. I think it's also too, like if you're in the industry, then yeah, I say go for it. But again, I think you have to really see the requirements for this job to see that if it makes sense for you. Again, it's okay if you're missing one thing, but if you're like an entry level person and then again you're applying for a manager position, you're not really matching the qualifications. They're not going to give you a call. So you're also taking time for yourself to apply to a position that could be better fit for you.
Yeah. Well said. Perfect. And I had a question about behavioral interview questions. I'm going to refer you to multiple past episodes of Sound Off with System 1. We have entire episodes and articles on behavioral questions. So please make sure you check that out. A lot of great resources there. We have another question. If a company has multiple opportunities, would submitting tailored resumes to highlight the requested skills be a good idea, like a tech lead, senior software engineer, data engineer? Great question.
I am not in the technical space, so I'll preface my answer with that. I don't think it's necessary. I think that if you're going to tailor, maybe do it for the one that you're most qualified for. Where does your experience line up with who they're looking for? But if you feel like maybe one of these roles is a step above or even a little lower than your skill set, it's sufficient to use the same resume. It's more than likely the same recruiter if it's a hiring company. So they're going to have your resume in front of you and be considering you for whatever opportunities they have available. So I would say that's unnecessary.
Fantastic. And we are going to do one more question today. Thank you for everyone who sent in the questions. Is it good to include letters of reference when applying online?
I can start with this one. I think it goes to like the cover letter question. If there's space for the cover letter, absolutely have that. When it comes to including letters of reference, I personally would keep those tight to the chest until you get through the process. They're your information, and I think they should be shared when requested. I know even on resumes it says references available upon request. That's great. I would not share anything until asked for it personally.
Yeah, I again, it's one of those things. It may help, it may not do anything, but at that point in time at the beginning, it is yours. That's something that you have that is going to help communicate who you were previously, and it's a little premature to do that without someone expressing interest in your application or you as a candidate. So totally fine to, even once you get maybe to the point where you're emailing them, if you want to just share them at a later point, but at the application point, it doesn't make sense necessarily.
Perfect. Well, those were really great questions, even better answers. Thank you so much, panel. You all were so helpful. We're out of time for today, so thank you to everyone that commented. We really appreciate you tuning in. Don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn and go to our YouTube channel for past Sound Off with System 1 episodes. Again, there were a lot of great questions, and a lot of those questions can be answered in past episodes. Make sure you tune in every first and third Friday at 2 p.m. where we'll have more job seeker topics. Our next Sound Off with System 1 live stream is Friday, June 6th at 2, and we'll be discussing optimizing your resume for recruiting software. See you then.